Good afternoon, folks. Pastor Hans here from Prophetic Sword Ministries International. I'd like to draw your attention to my main blog, which is Last Days Review at blogspot.com. Once you're at that site, you'll find links to 3 more blogs that I publish on a weekly basis, plus one Spanish. And if you are not up to reading a 15 or 18-minute article, I can direct you to our podcast channel, which is on the same page, and also weekly broadcasts through YouTube, such as the one you're seeing today. I wanted to talk a little about biblical prophecy today. We're coming into the year of 2018, and for many people that doesn't mean very much, and it may not, and I want you to be very clear on something. I am not a prophet of God. The Lord has not spoken to me about any specific disasters that are going to happen in 2018, but in reviewing Scripture and in reading Matthew chapter 24 and seeing an awful lot of the things that are happening in the world today, it just leads me to wonder whether or not things could change in our world sometime this next year. And I'm not talking about the rapture of the church. I am not a date setter. I have no idea when that blessed event could happen. The Lord has not spoken to me, and if I told you He had spoken to me, I would immediately turn off this YouTube, because the Word is very clear. In fact, in Matthew chapter 24, verse 36, it says, "But of that day and hour no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, but my Father only." And so when you see some of these people trying to predict the dates for the rapture of the church, my suggestion is that you shy away from them, because it's just not biblical. The rapture is an imminent event. Not imminent, but imminent, which means that it could happen at any second, although the Lord could delay that happening for another 100 years. I don't believe that that will be the case, but there is nothing prophetically that has to happen before the rapture of the church happens. As a pre-tribulation believer, I teach and have taught for many years, unashamedly, that I believe that the church will not be here during the time of Jacob's trouble, which is the last 7 years of the book of Revelation. And the Bible is pretty specific about that. It's hard for me to see how people can miss it in a number of areas of Scripture. But, you know, we all have our different opinions, and I have always believed that even though somebody may not agree with my position on a pre-tribulation rapture, it should not make us enemies. We should not fight over it. We should be able to agree that it's okay to disagree and not call each other names, as is the case with a lot of people writing on Facebook and in their blogs and writing books and insulting one another. And I just do not believe that that glorifies God, nor do I believe that it could possibly be making Him happy. Now, I will tell you that if I see something that is blatantly false doctrine, I'm going to go after that, and I'm going to warn the people that are under my authority in my congregation, or the people that I'm ministering at the time to, so that they are not led astray. I'm not going to overlook false doctrine. But by the same token, you know, I look at the church today and all of the really nasty commentaries that are coming forth by a number of people about other people and their opinions in the church, and it makes me wonder, are we just going to show up one day after the rapture and kiss and make up, and everything is going to be hunky-dunky and a-okay, no matter how mean we were to each other here on this planet? The same thing has happened throughout history. Look at the Civil War. You had people on both sides wearing a gray uniform, wearing a blue uniform. They all went to church. They all confessed that they loved Jesus Christ, and yet they were on the battlefields killing each other just as quickly as they could over political doctrine. And yes, slavery and things that are wrong, there's no question about that. But that theme has recreated itself throughout all of history. And I just don't think that that pleases the Lord. Today, we have so many denominations, for example, that are coming against Israel and siding with the Palestinians. And it's not that I don't want the Palestinians to have a homeland, I do. But what a lot of people don't realize is a homeland was created for them by the League of Nations, which was the precursor to the United Nations. It was created for them, and it was called Transjordan, which the British later set up a monarchy on that ground and created the Kingdom of Jordan as a political favor, and the Palestinian people were left out in the cold, and they never got their promised homeland that was created for them by the League of Nations. And so, you know, there's an awful lot of injustice happening in the world today. Of one thing I can tell you is that I'm diametrically opposed to creating a Palestinian state within the borders of Israel. It's just not going to work. First of all, their birth rate among the Arab and Muslim peoples are several times greater than the Israeli people, or in America for that matter. And within 5 or 6 generations, the Israelis would be voted out of extinction, into extinction rather. It would be voted out of existence. And so, you know, the Lord gave this land to Israel, and it's a difficult pill for me to swallow, knowing that large denominations within the church are siding with the Palestinian people rather than with the church. I mean, I'm sorry, I apologize for that, siding with Israel. They are our brethren. Our entire nation was based here on a Judeo-Christian ethic in the United States. Our Bible, the New Testament, was based upon the Old Testament. Jesus is spoken about in the Old Testament on a number of occasions, not by name, but it's pretty hard to miss if you're a student of the Bible. All of that to say, we're coming into a time in 2018 that I believe has some prophetic significance to it. First of all, as near as we can determine, a Jubilee year fell between 2017 and 2018, and what Jubilee was all about in the first place was a reclaiming of the land, allowing it to rest, and a reclaiming of the land. And the land of Israel, given by God to Israel, is many times larger than what they are currently occupying. The second thing that strikes me, and may or may not be of prophetic significance, is that Psalm 90 verse 10 talks about the years, the days of a man. And it's the last recorded time in the Bible where God sets the lifespan of a man, and it says it will be 70. Or in the newer translations of the Bible, it says that the lifespan of a man will be, on the average, 70 years, and if by reason of natural strength he lives to be 80, then so on and so forth. But the date set by God is 70 years on the average. Well, when you take May the 14th, 1948, which we believe is a date that, well, it was the date that Israel was reestablished in as a nation, and we believe it's spoken of by Jesus in Matthew chapter 24 as the blossoming of the fig tree. When you add 70 years to 1948, you come up with the year 2018. And 2018 is therefore the 70th year from the establishment of Israel, and 7 is the number of completion. Now, that may not mean anything. I'm only throwing some ideas out for you to think about. I'm not predicting that the end of the world is going to happen in 2018, because clearly that's not going to happen for another 1,000 years, according to the book of Revelation. But I think that some big things are in store for us this next year. A few things that are on the horizon right now is that Ezekiel chapters 38 and 39 talk about the eventual war of Gog from the land of Magog. And it says that the northern king, who we believe is Russia, will lead a consortium of nations, Libya, which is the current Libya today, by the way, and Iran, which was ancient Persia, are specifically mentioned, and a number of the other small nations are gathered in and around what is now Turkey. Well, I think that prophecy could be fulfilled here at some point in the near future, maybe not next year, because historically speaking, Russia, Persia, and Turkey have been bitter enemies since time immemorial. Now they're not. Now they're best buds. Russia is helping with Iran's nuclear program. Turkey has just in the past 2 years gone from a thoroughly democratic, pro-Western nation to a total Islamic extremist dictatorship in a short period of 2 years. And the three of those, Russia, Turkey, and Iran, ancient Persia, are now patrolling together on the northern border of the Golan Heights of Israel, supposedly as peacekeepers. But these people are the seeds of the nations which will eventually come together for the invasion of Israel by the armies of Gog from the land of Magog. Other things that are happening as well is that Jordan, a kingdom, and Saudi Arabia, a kingdom, are shaking in their purple robes because at any moment they could be overthrown by Islamic extremists. There are a number of nations in the Middle East that no longer have stable governments, and the seeds of terrorism are growing within their borders, including, by the way, Libya. There's no stable form of government there. Egypt has a stable form of government at this moment, but that's gone back and forth several times. Nobody knows what's going to happen. Egypt controls the southern Sinai, and yet ISIS is still in control of great swaths of the southern Sinai and has recently lobbed rockets into Israel. Right now, Hezbollah on Israel's northern border has somewhere between an estimated 150 to 180,000 missiles and rockets pointed at Israeli cities. And Israel is building up on its northern border to defend itself against an attack by Hezbollah, who, by the way, has just taken over the entire country of, politically speaking, the country of Lebanon, because the leader of Lebanon just fled the country within the past 3 weeks, I believe, and fled to Saudi Arabia and has taken up asylum there. Things are moving so quickly on the prophetic stage, the biblically prophetic stage, and a lot of people within the church are clueless about what is happening. Other events that are happening is that it was just announced this past week that the U.S. government and the military has significant evidence to indicate that North Korea is developing and planning a missile large enough to launch a thermonuclear device over the United States of America in an attack that we would call an EMT, electromagnetic something. And basically what happens is a nuclear weapon is exploded not on the ground, but several miles over the atmosphere.
It's EMP, electromagnetic pulse.
I'm sorry, I was just corrected. Electromagnetic pulse. And what happens is it knocks out the entire power grid, and which would devastate the United States. And if something like that happened, who knows? It could set off this pending horrific explosion that they're thinking might happen in Yellowstone, which could devastate 5 western states. And we don't know. I mean, I'm not a harbinger of bad news, but these things are on the horizon, and we also cannot ignore them. Right now, something is happening, a huge upheaval in Saudi Arabia, where on the one hand, they are forming political alliances with Israel because they're more afraid now of Iran than they are of Israel. That doesn't mean Saudi Arabia loves Israel, believe me. But on the other hand, there has been a commission set up in Saudi Arabia that have arrested a number of extremely wealthy Saudi Arabians, including some members of the royal family, and are locking these people up in some kind of a coup that nobody really knows what's going on there. My message is that the Middle East is so unstable right now that almost anything could happen, and we are approaching very rapidly a time, particularly with this president in the White House. I'm not dissing him. I don't talk about politics in any of my articles, but we have a president in the White House right now that is not going to be pushed. He's not going to be pushed by North Korea or anybody else. And as a result, all of these threats that are happening from North Korea could very well end up with some kind of a preemptive strike by the United States and the NATO allies in order to stop Korea from obtaining their nuclear goals. So things are hot right now on the horizon and getting hotter. And I know that nobody wants to listen to bad news on the news. I personally turn it on at night for about 15 minutes and bring myself up to speed on what is happening in the world, and then I turn it off when all the talking heads start yelling at each other and they talk over one another, won't let each other speak. That's when I shut it off. But we can gain some pearls of wisdom by watching what is happening in the news, although, you know, this is also a matter of liars figure and figures lie also. So I'm always in the process of saying which one of these newscasts are correct, which one of them are telling the truth. I mean, we just don't know these days. So I guess my message today is the Bible tells us to look up because our redemption draws nigh. And I have no idea when the Lord is going to come. I don't know when he's going to rapture the church, but I can look at what's happening in the world today. I can read my Bible, and I can see that the two of those are coalescing at an extremely rapid rate. And when they will fall into lockstep with one another, I can't honestly tell you. But I do believe that 2018 could be a year of tremendous happenings in this world. And nobody should run in panic because of that, but we need to be wise. We need to keep our eyes open. We need to be alert. And more than anything, we need to be in prayer. So with that, I will close today and just tell you that if you're a Christian believer out there, I love you, and I'm sure that you love me too. And you may or may not agree with my opinions on what's happening, but we can still be friends. So thank you for tuning in today, and this is Pastor Rant signing off for Last Days Review at blogspot.com and Prophetic Sword Ministries International. God bless you today. Bye.